Hi, and welcome to Freedom Fighters Code Gray. This is a show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue that's happening in our community and our very own backyards. Some of the content in this show may be triggering for viewers, as we will be dealing with subject matter related to exploitation and trauma. For information and support related to human trafficking, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-833-900-1010. Today, I am joined by Kim Kneeshaw, the Executive Director at North Simcoe Victim Services, who's going to be discussing the topic of human trafficking today. We're going to be chatting about what does human trafficking look like in our community, what are some of the signs and indicators, and how can you, as a viewer, get involved and support someone who has experienced exploitation. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for joining me today. I'm just really glad that you're here.
Hi, Michaela. Thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
Well, just to start off with, some people might be tuning into our episode before and they hear the words human trafficking and then they hear me saying in our very own backyards, and that information is brand new to them. So could you just take some time to explain what does human trafficking look like in our community?
So human trafficking can be a number of different things in our community. It can be labor trafficking, it can be sex trafficking of vulnerable individuals, or luring and grooming of minors. Human trafficking is defined as the recruiting, harboring, and controlling of a person for the purpose of exploitation. This can include sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, or the forced removal of organs. And unfortunately, human trafficking, especially the sex trade and labor trafficking, is rampant in our community. And as we know, sex trafficking exists in our community, we at North Simcoe Victim Services actually tend to see more cases of labor trafficking. But I think that those are just the cases that are coming to light in our community and being uncovered by the OPP. And I would say that it's not that the OPP is not investigating sex trafficking cases. They absolutely are. It's just that sometimes people are less likely to come forward if they've been victims of sex trafficking.
Thank you, Kim, for taking the time to share that. I'm wondering if you'd be able to dive a little deeper into labor trafficking. Like, where are some of the locations that people are trafficked for labor in our community?
Well, ordinarily, because our services are confidential, we would not speak about specific cases. But most recently, we assisted the OPP with their Operation Sassafras, which was the code name of the liberation event that they did. So there was an individual that was charged with several counts of human trafficking. There was a recent media release that we participated in, so I am able to speak briefly about that. And in that situation with Operation Sassafras, the 15 people that we assisted were Mexican nationals, and they had been forced into labor trafficking, and it was all construction work. So it was construction work. They were housed within the Aurelia community, but then they were out working on different job sites in our area. And then we have assisted with other labor trafficking cases that were in the hospitality industry and that were, as far as Collingwood and different sort of pockets of areas that you would see more hospitality type workers.
Thanks, Kim, for taking the time to share and for the work that your team was involved in supporting those individuals after they were able to exit that situation. And so what I heard you share was that, labor trafficking is happening in really visible places in our community where we live, like in construction areas, in hotels, motels, different aspects of the hospitality industry, right? We know labor trafficking can happen in restaurants. So in all these different areas where people are interacting and going about their day, like trafficking could be happening in that area. So could you share some of the misconceptions or myths that people might believe about, what trafficking is and how it happens?
Oh. So I think one common misconception that people have is that it's always a violent crime. And it's not necessarily always a violent crime. Boyfriend pimps are more prevalent in our area. And people who were in relationships with them and then were forced into helping with their situation. So we see a lot of that in our area with sex trafficking. There's a misconception that only women and girls can be sex trafficked, which is absolutely not true. Males can also be victims of sex trafficking, as well as members of the LGBTQ community. And then we've also dealt with situations where the trafficked person may have consented initially to providing sexual services. So then they feel that they can actually be a victim of human trafficking because of their initial consent. And people also can have that misconception that if someone initially consents to sex work, that they can't then be considered a victim of human trafficking. They can't later be trafficked. And that's absolutely untrue.
You provided some really helpful insights into not only how trafficking happens, but who is being trafficked, right? And I think that's such an important thing for folks in the community to know, that it can really happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic background. Like, trafficking doesn't discriminate, and it can happen to anyone. But with that being said, we know women and girls are overrepresented, and especially people in our Indigenous community are overrepresented in trafficking situations as well. And so when we look at how trafficking is happening in our community and in some of these visible places, what are some of the signs and indicators that someone might be experiencing trafficking?
There can be a lot of different signs and indicators, some of them more subtle than others. We look for changes in behavior. So people who were more sociable, more in contact with their family, are more withdrawn. They're not reaching out to family and friends. They've suddenly become secretive. They may start avoiding eye contact when they're speaking. They may start to appear fearful or anxious, depressed, or submissive. They may suddenly have expensive clothing and have their nails done. And then conversely, they may also have next to no belongings. So it can be a real paradox. They may be dressed age inappropriately with the clothing that they're wearing, or they may be dressed inappropriately, perhaps for the time of year, and not be dressed well enough. There may be unexplained disappearances where they're just gone for periods of time and don't really have an explanation as to where they've gone or why they've gone, and then they just suddenly reappear. Not having control of their own money or their own cell phone. If someone has none of their own funds and they're constantly having to ask. Having someone constantly with them so that they're being watched. Recently, one of our staff members was shopping on her lunch hour, and when she went in, she noticed there was a girl that was picking out clothing, and there was also a gentleman off to the side of the store that was watching her and watching what she was picking off the racks, and had his eyes on her the whole time that she was in the store, and followed her, and not necessarily even, he didn't even really hide it well, the fact that he was surveilling this girl and following her through the store. It's very distressing, and it's so heartbreaking to see, and to see it happening in our community. So being controlled and watched by others, they're driven to and from locations, they're always escorted, never alone. And if you do ask them about those unexplained absences, they may have almost scripted sounding answers, right? Or maybe their story just doesn't add up and it doesn't make sense. They may be moved around frequently, claim to be new to the area or just visiting. You may see signs of physical abuse. They may have bruises. They may appear malnourished. There may be other physical symptoms. Quite often people are branded by their traffickers. So they may have a new tattoo or something that's showing that they belong to the trafficker. There may also be signs of having been physically constrained, confined, or tortured.
If someone in our community saw some of these signs or indicators and maybe suspected this person could potentially be trafficked, what should they do? Where could they report? What information would be available for them to follow up further?
So I would suggest that if they saw something like that, that they would report it to the OPP. If they're able to approach the person and ask them if they need help and let them know that help is available, that's a great thing to do. But I would also suggest reporting it to the OPP.
And how about, you mentioned earlier, sometimes people who are being exploited may not realize that they're in a situation of trafficking because of various indicators. So if someone just, was listening and heard some of those indicators and think, hey, I might be in a situation of trafficking, where can they access information and support?
So we are always available to assist. So our phone number is 705-325-5578. They can always call the National Trafficking Hotline that you referred to at the beginning of the segment. And then they could also speak with the OPP. But if they just wanted information about their situation so that they could make that judgment call, I would definitely suggest calling the National Trafficking Hotline or calling us at Victim Services, and we can help them by giving them more information and then giving them some resources and supports.
That's great. Thanks, Kim. And along those lines, what exactly does your organization do to assist people who have been trafficked?
So some of the things that we do, North Simcoe Victim Services is available to assist 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are always specially trained crisis response volunteers that are available and on call. And then through the week, we have 4 very well-trained office staff that offer assistance, practical assistance and emotional support to victims. So some of the things that we do is that we will go out and we will provide on-scene support. We also do telephone support for those people wishing to call into the office and find out more information about their own situation, or perhaps someone who has concerns about another situation. So we, through Victim Services, are able to broker a program called Victim Quick Response Program. It was a program that was began as a pilot project in 2007, and it was in response to the most violent crimes, and recognizing that the more quickly people are able to be offered assistance, the better they are then able to cope with the trauma that they've experienced and move forward. So some of these supports that we can offer through VQRP are counseling, interpretation services, short-term accommodation, cell phones, basic needs such as food, clothing, and toiletries, transportation to safety, residential treatment facility, dental care, home safety supports, and connections to appropriate agencies for ongoing assistance.
Kim, that's incredible. I'm so grateful that your team exists and that North Simcoe Victim Services exists to be able to provide this support and service to assist and come alongside people who have been trafficked in our community. The work you're doing is truly invaluable, and I'm just so great to have the opportunity to learn from you and the important work that you're doing. And we're going to continue this discussion after we take a short break. And welcome back to Freedom Fighters Code Gray, a show where we're discussing human trafficking. Today, I'm joined by Kim Kneeshaw, the Executive Director at North Simcoe Victim Services. And Kim was just taking the time to share with us before our break about a program that they offer called the Victim Quick Response Program. Kim, I'm wondering if you could just take some time to share a bit more about the details of what this program includes, what it's all about, and how someone who may be experiencing trafficking could access that support if needed.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. The Victim Quick Response Program is brokered through our office, and we provide services to victims of human trafficking in our area. So we cover the same coverage area that the Aurelia OPP covers. So that's kind of important to note that those would be the victims that we would serve. So through Victim Quick Response Program, we can provide counseling, and it's $2,000 worth of counseling. The counseling can also be culturally appropriate counseling. So if it was, for instance, a person who was Indigenous and they wanted to have counseling or services provided by an elder, then that's absolutely something that could be provided through the Victim Quick Response Program. There are interpretation services that can be covered because quite often victims of human trafficking may not speak the language, especially labor trafficking victims. We have found in most cases that we've dealt with that we've been lucky if there's been one person among the whole group of victims that's able to communicate in English. So quite often we're looking at procuring interpretation services to be able to communicate with them. Short-term accommodation is something that we can also provide through VQRP. So that would be a short stay in a motel until we can help them find longer accommodation. Quite often with our labor trafficking victims, because they are typically of they're Mexican nationals or they're from another country and they don't speak our language, and we have very little cultural services here in Orillia. So they want to go somewhere where there's more people of their same culture and where there's more services available to them. We very often will end up transporting people to Toronto so that they can access services at the Mexican consulate. And there is a bigger population of Mexican people in Toronto. So they may know someone else that's in Toronto and lives there. So they may have a connection or they may find a connection. So quite often we do provide transportation to Toronto for people so that they can access those services. We can also provide cell phones. So often someone doesn't have a cell phone. They've not, that's another way of the trafficker controlling them, is limiting their ability to communicate with the outside world. And so they may not have their own cell phone. So because they're a victim of human trafficking, we can provide them with a cell phone, with a SIM card and minutes so that they can communicate. Basic needs such as food, clothing, and toiletries can be provided to people. If they have an addiction, we don't see this as much with labor trafficking as we do with sex trafficking victims, but someone who's been a victim of sex trafficking, if they didn't go into it with an addiction, then the traffickers made darn sure that they have one by the time they're done, right? We see it so frequently, and it's heartbreaking. So through VQRP, we can apply for $20,000 towards the cost of a residential treatment facility so that people can go and get help with that issue. Quite often people haven't been able to access dental care when they're being trafficked, right? It's just not something that the trafficker is going to provide. So we can do emergency dental care. There are home safety supports if they do have their own place and they need to be safe and have some safety equipment, some personal safety equipment. And then we try and provide them with just connections to other appropriate agencies for ongoing assistance. But VQRP is an amazing program that we broker, and we're able to offer so many great supports to people. And it's a fairly painless application process. We really just need to know the person's name, date of birth, contact information. If they don't have a fixed address, it's not a problem as long as we can get a hold of them to say, this has been approved. We pay the cost of the services ahead of time, so there's no cost to the victim ever. And the government will reimburse us when we invoice them for our out-of-pocket expenses. And the turnaround and approval time is very quick, and it is all confidential.
Wow. I am honestly blown away by these services that exist that really, wrap around supports, if you will, that address everything from mental health to possible physical implications of their trafficking experience to meeting their basic needs, which would help not only someone prevent re-exploitation, but aid them on their journey to healing and freedom. So that's really beautiful. And I'm really glad to know that those services are available for folks who are seeking support in our community. There's also a really interesting initiative that your organization offers called a survivor support kit. So, what is a survivor support kit? What is it comprised of? And how can someone who's tuning in today contribute towards this great initiative?
So we recently did a drive to gather funds and items needed to make the survivor support kit. So the survivor support kit was something that actually was born out of another OPP initiative where the OPP officers would make, it was called Operation Northern Spotlight, and they would book a date in a hotel, and then one of our client services workers would go with the OPP, but wait offside, and we would have a kit with us. And so this is where the kits were born, and the ideas of the kit was that it was something that we could offer the person to show them that we cared, you know, to be that initial building of trust. Here's something, there is no strings attached to this kit. It is yours, take it, right? And if you know, at some point choose to leave the situation, kind of here's our business card or the way that you can connect with us, right? So the contents of the kit, there's a variety of items in there. And what we tried to do was think about what would be helpful for someone, and maybe things that they would be allowed to keep as well, right? If they chose not to leave, but they want to keep the kit. So the kits contain a variety of items. So we do toiletries, and we try to do large size, like regular size toiletries, not hotel size toiletries. So there's shampoo, there's conditioner, body wash, lotion, deodorant, chapstick, toothbrush, toothpaste. So sort of basic hygiene needs. A hairbrush, we put hair ties in there. And then the kit will also contain a complete change of clothing. So it could be a hoodie, some stretchy pants, like something comfortable, or track pants for the winter, t-shirt, sports bra, underwear, socks. We put in a toque and scarf and mitts just in case it's inclement weather. And then we actually have footwear available in the office. But it's too hard to guess somebody's foot size to put it into the kit. So we do keep them at the office. The kits also have a blanket and some comfort items. So a blanket, a stuffed animal, a Tim Hortons gift card, an adult coloring book, and some pencil crayons, a journal and a pen, some hand sanitizer, a whistle. And then all of those items are packed into a backpack, so they're nice and portable. And so these kits just really help us try and show that we care, right? And provide a little bit of comfort to the victims, and it's theirs to keep, whether they choose to leave the situation or they don't. It's just a way that we can show that we care. And so that's what they're all about. There is a donation tab on our website if people are interested, or we also accept physical donations. They are all new items that go in the kits. We don't accept anything used to go into the kits. We feel it's very important that we're only giving new items to our victims of human trafficking because they've been through so much already. They need to know that they're valued. And so we feel it's important to give them donations of new items only.
I love this initiative so much. And I love what you shared there. It's important for folks to know that they're cared for, that they are valued, and that there are people willing and ready to help. You mentioned people could drop off new items to a physical location. What is the address of that location?
Thank you. So our office is located within the Aurelia OPP detachment, and the detachment is located at 1 University Avenue in Aurelia, which is right across from Rotary Place. And our office is immediately off the lobby. It's the first door on your left when you enter the front lobby of the Aurelia OPP detachment.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Kim. And these kits, okay, so we know that they're being, put together and then given out into the community. Do you have a story of how one of these kits has made a positive impact, has made a difference in someone's life?
We've given out quite a few of the kits. We've had a kit given out during one of the Operation Northern Spotlights at the hotel, where later the person that received the kit actually did come to us for services. So they left the situation, which was fantastic and amazing and just awesome. I don't have enough good words for that. And then there's also just the little things. Like, we had a victim of human trafficking come to our office for assistance. They had very, very little with them. The clothing, all of the clothing that they owned, they were wearing because they didn't even have anything to carry any clothing in. So, they had 2 or 3 shirts on and, multiple pairs of like socks and that kind of thing. So whatever they had, they were wearing. And unfortunately, they had been trapped outside and were soaking wet. So everything they had on was soaking wet, and that was everything that they owned. And they had nothing to even carry anything new in. So by being able to give them the kit, they were able to change into clean and dry clothes. And then, we gave them plastic bags to put their wet stuff inside the backpack. And then they actually start out with at least a little bit of belongings and a little bit of personal care items and, things to kind of at least call their own and start out with, right? So, so multiple times we've seen them sort of be put to very good use and really make a difference for somebody. It was like we had handed that person the world, just giving them a clean set of clothes. And when we make up the support kits, I neglected to mention that we do them in sizes. So we have one in extra small, medium, large, and extra large, so that it's going to fit the person as well.
Kim, thank you so much to you and to your team for the incredible work that you're doing to care for, to provide support to people in our community who are in need of assistance, and for reminding them that they are loved, that they are valued, that their life matters, and that there is support available to them. I'm so grateful for what you do each and every day to pour into the lives of those in need in our community. If you are tuning into our show today and you're in immediate need of assistance, please call 911. If you are looking for information and support related to human trafficking, you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline that's available 24/7 at 1-833-900-1010. Again, that's 1-833-900-1010. Thank you so much for tuning into our program today, and we hope that we catch you again in our next episode of Freedom Fighters Code Gray.